welcome to a special edition of Off the Record called On the Record, our first episode for this special series, and we're blessed to have the wonderful Dr. Akeda Pearson join us today. And man, does she have a long resume and a lot of qualifications? She is a very special person. She is the Deputy Director of School Administration for Baltimore Teacher Network. She is the founder and host of Third Sunday Tea Talk Show. She is an assistant professor at Bowie State University, and she's CEO of Premier Training and Professional Development. Dr. Akeda, welcome to On the Record. Thank you for joining us. How are you this evening?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for having me. It is exciting to be off the record today on the record with some amazing African American Black men up in the house.
Hey.
Yes, absolutely.
Shout outs to the Black men in that house.
Absolutely.
You keep saying that, Dr. Pearson. You're gonna have Quan blushing. I see he's blushing already.
Look, Dr. Keita, you look, when you're real dark and you can see the rosy red cheeks on the
Oh, absolutely. The absolute best men on the planet in the universe. Can't find a better brother than a Black man.
All right, here we go.
Okay, all right, absolutely.
For those tuning in live or those listening to this later, we're going to talk to Dr. Akeda about the school system, specifically Baltimore City school system. And much like every major city out there are positives and there are negatives regarding the school system. But we thought no better person to speak with and just gain some further insight into some of the things happening in Baltimore City. And so what I'm going to do is really just start with my esteemed colleague, Quan, and allow him to kick it off with a question for you, Dr. Akeda.
All right.
Absolutely. So much. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. So, Dr. Akeda, before we actually get into the particular school system in Baltimore City and the positives, the pros, and the cons, I first just wanted to ask this one question. First, I understand that you have a show called Third Sunday Tea Talk. So I've done my research on it. It's very informative to me. Can you go in depth a little bit about the show and what we know it's about and what's the idea behind it?
Absolutely. So Third Sunday Tea Talk Show is an outgrowth of Third Sunday Tea Tastings and Testimonials, which started about 9 years ago. And we were fortunate enough to go on social media. So we took advantage of that. But it's a show where we educate, advocate, and we celebrate it. And we do this in honor of victims of domestic violence. And those individuals who are victims, we look at them as survivors, but I consider them victors. So it's an opportunity to celebrate them, to share awareness and advocacy for women, children, and men who are victims of domestic violence. So we've been doing that work, and we continue to do that work. But that is the impetus for Third Sunday Tea Talk Show. But we just don't focus on domestic violence. It's a show where we provide a platform for local artists, for nonprofits, to give a platform where others may not have a platform, to share, to learn, and things that are going on in our local community.
That's amazing. And see, and that's what I think it's about, being able to have people come on, provide their testimony, provide their trials, their tribulations, their victorious moments, and being able to shine light so it can assist and help other people and bring them along as well, because that's what we feel it's all about at the end of the day. And so I think that's great. I think it's amazing. I've watched the particular episodes, and I it's, like I said, it was very informative, and having different people on, being able to discuss particular things that they have been going through, and being able to, like I said, shine light and be able to assist and help out of other people that have so many great things that they have offered to bring to the table, but they just need a particular platform just to be able to boast it and just to get it out there. So I just think that's amazing. And I just want to give you, shine your light on Third Sunday Tea Talk. And for everybody out there that's viewing us, please go check out Third Sunday Tea Talk. It's an amazing show, and I'm telling you, you guys will love it and enjoy it.
Thank you.
Dr. Akeda, the four of us are products of Howard County Public Schools. And You hear a lot of great things about Howard County. I mean, we've been out of school for 20 years, all four of us, but when we were in school, there was a lot of great things going on with Howard County schools, and maybe there still is. But Baltimore City, sometimes you don't hear those same positives coming out. And I am curious what you think the greatest challenge is facing the Baltimore City school system.
Well, it wouldn't just be one challenge. It would be several challenges. And there are a lot of factors that play a role in some of the, I would say, woes or issues that are consistently in the media's eye of Baltimore City public schools. When Baltimore City public schools kind of originated, when we look at the history of it, they were developing schools as trades to funnel some of the industries during that particular time. If you all remember in history, just jogging a little bit back, there was a great migration from individuals in the South to the North, and they were preparing individuals for industry. Bethlehem Steel, one of the largest companies that was in Maryland at one time where my grandfather worked, they were gearing people for that kind of industry. And due to some of the decisions of lawmakers and individuals who had authority during those particular times, I don't think that they really got to where we were forward thinking to prepare for the next new technology, next learning stage, new curriculums to address that. So when we look at Howard County, of course, Howard County is a newer community. It's a newer area when you look at a Howard County versus a Baltimore City. Now, there are several challenges per se when we just look at Baltimore City. And I just jotted down some notes because I wanted to make sure that the listening and viewing and audience just had some key points to ponder. Not that they are the only factors, but these are just some. And one key factor is funding education and making sure that the funding is allocated. They are behind some of the other school districts like Howard County, Montgomery County, Anne Arundel County, Prince George's County in funding. And we have to also look at the tax base and where these legislators, where they determine what the tax base is and how much money should be allocated. And then we look also at the number of charter schools within a specific area, and then the governing body of the charter schools. I firmly believe that the authorizer should be a third party and not necessarily the school district. And there was a lot of that went on in DC, where they had a third party authorizer. Sometimes it's a heavy weight on the school system to monitor and to do all the things that are required with charter schools, as well as monitoring those charter schools. That kind of takes away oftentimes from the public school, especially if there is not good relations between the authorizers and those individuals who are leading the public schools. In addition to funding, keeping schools safe. So we know that in Baltimore City this year, I think it's the last couple of days, it might have been a statistic of 78 people or 76 people who have been murdered in Baltimore City alone. Last year was over 300 murders within that city. So when you look at achievement of students within schools, students suffer when they are fearful and they do not feel safe in school. So reducing the exposure to violence within the school community, that could assist. But oftentimes we know that what happens within the streets of Baltimore, it bleeds over into the schools, into the classrooms. So number 2 would be keeping schools safe. Stress and anxiety is huge among teachers, students, and employees within school systems, even bus drivers. There was research done a year or two ago in reference to a study out of the University of Missouri, and they pulled hundreds of elementary school teachers. 93% of those particular elementary school school teachers, 93% of those elementary school teachers said that they suffered being highly stressed. highly stressed. And these are elementary school teachers. So there are so many issues that teachers face from being in a kindergarten classroom to a high school classroom. And oftentimes, those are some of the barriers when we look at teacher shortages, because another challenge is the teacher shortage. We've been facing a teacher shortage in the United States for 40 or 50 years, to say the least. And that teacher shortage has increased, and it has continuously increased. And there has not been, from my purview, a significant effort to recruit, to hire, and retain highly qualified teachers to be in classrooms. And it's difficult when you're in an urban area and you do not have the funding and you do not have all of the support that some areas have. If you notice recently, Howard County took a charge and say, look, we're upping our sub pay. We're upping all of our support staff, 25% pay increase. Did we see that in Baltimore City? We did not see that in Baltimore City. So when you look at teacher shortages and some of the other shortage areas, they're not just teacher shortages. There's shortages with one-on-ones for special education students. There are a lot of shortages within the element of education. Another thing is utilizing restorative practices versus the no tolerance or zero tolerance policy. And Baltimore City has been doing a really good job at that, although it is still a challenge because we still face other entities and hoops and loops that individuals have to go through, and training of educational professionals to make sure that restorative practices is as a high priority for making sure that schools are safe and students are getting what they need best. Another challenge would be chronic absenteeism. So the chronic absenteeism of even teachers and staff and students, that all play a role to the challenges. And it has a direct impact on the learning achievement and academic success of students. And then, we're governed by laws and standardized tests. And so a couple of years ago, there was the Every Student Succeeds Act, which required more accountability. So there are things that need to be put in place in order to address those mandates. And it's important that those things are addressed and that you have the support, the total support of those who are within a community to help build it up versus tearing it down. So those would be some of the premier challenges that I would say that Baltimore City face.
So basically they face every challenge.
Yeah, they face a lot of challenges, but they're not by themselves. So, I mean, most urban school districts face a lot of those same challenges, and even rural school districts, especially when you look at funding, right? So not just Baltimore City, all of those points that I gave, you could look at any urban school district and they would have very much the same similar challenge.
Brandon, I think you have a question about Patterson, right?
Yeah. As a recent survey or a recent investigation at Patterson High School, where they found that approximately 75% of the students were reading and their math level were at elementary school levels. And I was just wondering, as you know, as a leader in the community, as an educator yourself, like how does that make you feel? Does it like damage morale, or do you feel more motivated to get back to work? How does it make you feel?
Well, I'm a data-driven person. And so oftentimes when people just put stuff out in the media and they say, oh, the test scores are this, that's not the full story.
Tell us the full story.
Being a data-driven person, we know that there have been academic challenges and barriers at Patterson as well as other high schools across the board, and within Baltimore City is no different. However, what that particular report did not share is that Patterson is one of the most diverse high schools, if not the most diverse high school in Baltimore City. So more than 40% of the students from that particular test, which is not a standardized test, the test that they're looking at is a test called iReady. That particular test was, and it's used for in teachers' classrooms. It's an intervention to see where students are to support them in learning. But what they're looking at is at least 40% or more of those students were English language learners. English is not their first language. So we don't expect them in some instances to score extremely high, right? But to take a test like this that is used for intervention and to categorize it in that particular manner does not do justice to the students at that particular school, and nor to the students that were administered the exam. All of the students were not administered the exam. It was a couple hundred students. This school has approximately 1,600 students. So it was a couple hundred students, and they did 75% of that particular population, and 40% of that 75 population were English language learners. And I think it's a disservice to characterize them as that, because you have students who are coming into our country and coming into our schools from all, we live in a diverse society. So this might be a student's first time being in the United States. It might be their first time in that particular classroom. So they're learning to, and some of them may not even be proficient in their own language. So I just think that was a disservice to characterize it in that particular way. But absolutely, as far as students who are not learning at the rate that they should be learning, those are things that should be monitored. And those are things that I regard highly. I have a huge issue with students not having the tools they need when they graduate from high school. And of course, they need to be able to learn to write, but they need critical thinking skills and communication skills. They need to be creative and innovative learners.
Yes.
And we see that sometimes school districts fail students. And I think that, and giving some shout outs to Dr. Santalisa, since she's been there, she's been working really hard and relentlessly to utilize some of the best practices that are out there to try and remedy and support the students and teachers and the Baltimore City Public School employees and students at large. And the thing that is so important, Baltimore City Public School has had challenges for many years.
Many years. Yes.
Okay. It's a systemic problem, and the problem just does not lie within the school district. The school district cannot fix it by itself. It takes a concerted effort from the entire community. There's a saying that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, the village is broken.
Very.
And before that child can be raised, before these students can really maximize and all students have the same access and opportunities as others that we see in other counties around the state, that village has to come together. But we see that oftentimes, the adults that make the decisions and the things that are going on within the village, it hinders the academic success of students. But at the same time, there are some really beacons of light in Baltimore City Public Schools where kids shine. There are more students that are being successful than those students that are not.
Amen.
Yeah. So speaking of opportunity, Dr. Akeda, where are we at with closing that opportunity gap that we know is a huge issue within our school systems? In your opinion, is it getting are we getting any closer to closing that opportunity gap and those issues that we have with that?
Well, I would say there are opportunity gaps that are closing. So when you drill down to the data and you look at disaggregated data and some of the things that are happening, it may not be happening system-wide, but there are wonderful things and things that are happening at individual schools. So it would be good if individuals took an opportunity to look at some of those schools that are high performing, because there are best practices. There are things that are working in Baltimore City Public Schools, and in several of them where you can see that some of those opportunity gaps are closing.
That's good to hear.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I agree. I think what you said, and you make a good point with that. If we were to focus on those, like you said, those high performing schools, and maybe even some of these school systems going into those high performing schools and gathering the data, like you said, and asking these, sometimes these people, it won't even be a cost to them. Sometimes the people will come out and show their staff how they do things to succeed. But I think sometimes ego gets in the way of those type of things. But those things. I work within the school system too, so I see it.
Yes.
But yeah. So thank you for that.
So, Dr. Keita, yeah, I'm here. I'm listening. It's so much information to take in, everything that has been discussed, and you're very knowledgeable of the education system in Baltimore City and just overall. For me, my question is: was the education field, was it something that you always explored? Was it something that you always wanted to get into? Like, how did you get into education? Was it the calling? Was it education found you? How did you get into it?
Well, I would say that some people are called, and other people, they are groomed in the profession. For me, I'm a grits girl. I'm a girl grown in the South, right? So I was born on a farm. My dad still farms, and I wanted to be an actress and model, and that's what I wanted to do. And my mother said, "You a teacher. When you leave here, you're not coming back to our house." So I guess she knew me better than I knew myself. So I was like, okay, I'm a teacher. And I tell students that story, and they were like, "You listen to your mother?" And I was like, "Absolutely, I listen to my mother."
Nice.
Did, right? Back in
I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
So and then I didn't realize it myself until I got older. But even in grade school, I was tutoring people and all of that. And people would call me, "Help me with your child." Help me with your child. And, I would play teacher, but I didn't really realize it myself. But that's what my mother said. So I'm a teacher, and that's what I've done.
All right, man.
All right. Yeah, all right. And you wear it well. And I know that there's been thousands of kids that in our community that you have helped, that I know to this day that they think about you and they praise you for all the great things that you've done within the community. So I just we just appreciate you.
Yes, they do, and they come back and they're married and they have children, and I'm like, okay, all right, I remember years ago. Make me feel, a little older, but I am so grateful for an opportunity to utilize my gifts and talents to help others. It is a field of service, and one I'm grateful for. And as educators, we know that we're never going to be millionaires as teachers in that particular realm of being in a classroom, but the benefits are very much rewarding. So I have no regrets for being a teacher.
Absolutely.
All right.
Dr. Akeda, it's funny you brought up money, because I was going to ask you about that. As my wife and I had a spirited conversation last night about what teachers are paid and lack of funding. She's a mental health therapist, and they're not paid what they should be paid as well. And you talked about Howard County raising, teacher salaries 25% and these different things. The average teacher salary in Maryland is $44,000. Student loan debt is at a record high. How do you attract qualified teachers and retain them? But how do you convince high school students to go pursue an education degree in a field that's not going to pay them enough to support their student loan debt, rent, mortgages, car loans, essentially life? How do you get people to go into a field like that?
It is very difficult. because of course I'm at the university level as well. So if you put up all the qualifications of social service or business or any other profession up against teachers and all the requirements, because in order to become a teacher, and I'll just use the state of Maryland, it's about $2,000 in tests that you have to take and pass. That's money you have to put out, right? You have to do practicums that are not paid. So there are so much requirements as far as becoming a teacher. It really needs to start before high school. It needs to start even in elementary school, I would say, because when you put up the different professions and you say, well, oh, I'm going to be in debt. And yep, you're going to be in debt. That's just a reality, because your student loans are going to outweigh what you make. And that's here in Maryland. Now they are doing a little better. So it's about almost at 50,000 now as an average, but you have some states where it's still between 28 and 30,000. But the cost of living is just about the same as Maryland. So it's very difficult. It is not an easy task. Individuals are not going into the teaching profession. We are struggling. If you do research at universities across the United States, several of them have done away with their schools of education or colleges of education because they became liabilities, because they cannot recruit students in their schools.
Wow.
And that's just a fact. You could there's several that have just gone out of business as far as their school of educations or colleges of education, because people are not going into the field. So yet again, that infringes upon our teacher shortage issue. And it's really a crisis. I consider the teacher shortage a crisis today, that we don't have individuals that are qualified to go in our classrooms. And it is extremely difficult. When I talked about the ESSER grant, the ESSER Act earlier, there are so many new accountability things that teachers have to do and tests with praxis exams and EdTPA, and it is a lot. And even some of them who may aspire to do it when they come out of high school and they get in college, and they're like, look, I'm not doing all of this. I'm just going to give up. But it takes individuals who are in the field to talk about their experiences, like having students to get to overcome a milestone, working with students that may have learning disabilities, and then they're in college and they graduate from college, and telling those stories and the love for it. So those who are teachers, professors like me, we do everything we can to try and inspire, enlighten, and support those who take on the opportunity of going into education. I mean, not just supporting them and encouraging them, but also with dollars, because a lot of money is not funneled into the colleges of education. When you look at a lot of those philanthropy efforts and a lot of the monies, those monies are going into STEM, cybersecurity. They're not going into colleges of education.
Wow. I did not know that. Yeah, that's pretty deep right there. You know, when colleges are shutting down the education department. That's crazy. Well, I don't know. I feel like nothing will work, but I wanted to ask you about we talked about early learn. Well, you mentioned early learners in high school, as you kind of separated the two earlier in one of your statements, and digging a little bit, I saw that for early learners in Baltimore, they use a holistic kind of multi-generational approach where they take care of not only the student, but they also take care of the student's family. They have services for, the parents and whoever's taking care of the child. Other than the teacher shortage, do you think what I also noticed is that they weren't, it didn't look like they were applying this beyond early learners. When we're talking about early learners, those are getting ready for preschool, kindergarten, things like that, but they weren't really applying it for the older students as well. Do you think that that would be helpful? Because as I was doing the research, it seemed like it just made common sense to to offer the same thing to the older students too. Am I missing something? What do you think about
Well,
that?
when we look at some of the terminology is just different, but school
Mhm.
systems have been providing some of those services for many, many years.
Mhm.
I was instrumental in doing a program when I was a school district official in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, where parents who were coming to school and they did not have their high school diploma, when they dropped their kids off, they stayed at the school. And services were provided for them to get their high school diploma so they could reach and aspire to attain some of their goals so they could be better providers and examples for their children. There have been programs where students who are in high school, middle school, who have children, where they could bring their children to school with them and provide services for them. So they're in school, but they have daycare at the school. So they can attend to their child during their break, but they're in a safe place. They don't have to worry, where their child is and those kinds of things. And providing also job placement and support for them. The reality is poverty is real. And so when you're not able to facilitate that, those things bleed over into the classroom. So it's important that we don't just look at the student that's there, because the reality is what happens outside of the classroom, it has a direct impact in what happens in the classroom. Although when we look at our educators, we can only support what's done in the classroom unless there are other entities outside to provide that. Notice that I said when I was a school district official, I implemented that. A teacher doesn't have the capability. That's not what they're hired to do, to facilitate supporting the parents. But it's important that we do offer that support.
Wow. And that's another awesome thing. I don't know, just off the top, do you know if they're still using those things that you implemented?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
And doing our research on you and the wonderful things that you've done and implemented, we found that you were involved in some STEM programs, and you mentioned STEM not that long ago for our students. Can you tell us a little more about STEM, the importance of it, and then like where are our school systems in regards to implementing that and pushing it forward like you think it should be?
Absolutely. STEM is in every classroom and should be in every classroom. So most school districts, a part of best practices is utilizing STEM in every class, providing teachers a professional development that they should have. So it's incorporated in their daily lessons. It's not a separate thing. It's incorporated within every lesson every day.
Okay.
Great.
And I think that's something that's needed, because STEM can open up so much for our community. I mean, you have a genre of opportunities and jobs and careers that start from STEM, and that can take you far and take you a long way in life. Just understanding about STEM, and just like you said, starting early and
Absolutely.
being in there and being able to kind of just grow from that. So I think that's awesome.
Absolutely. But growing the professionals, growing the educators is key to make sure that it's in an English classroom, it's in a social studies classroom, it's in an arts class, it's in every element, every class that you walk in, you should see elements of STEM every day.
I agree.
And I've seen that you guys were even using like sports.
Absolutely.
To connect it. Yeah. So
absolutely.
that's great too. Yeah.
Sports is extremely important. Even people who are not sports fans, because sports brings so much to the table. It teaches students the element of critical thinking, how to make moves. Math is involved in sports, and you're looking at that element of team building, which is very important. That social aspect. Kids need to know how to be able to socialize in a proper manner, and then also how to self-direct and to have self-discipline. All of that happens within sports because you're on a team.
Right.
So even though it may be within me to make this move, but that may not be in the best interest of the team because my partner might be able to shoot better than I do. I can shoot. So versus me trying to take the shot, and even though I feel confident based on statistical data, I might be missing more than this one. So pass the ball. So sports is I enjoy sports. I like sports, and absolutely, it is a part of STEM, and we use it in that particular manner.
Excellent.
Absolutely. That's like, that reminds me of that episode of Martin. It's like, pass the peas like we used to do. Oh yeah. So that's great, Dr. Keita. And just going back to you're a Renaissance woman. Like you've done it all. You have a lot of credentials, and you've done a lot of great things, and you're doing a lot of great things in the community. And so one of the things that I found out, and I was, like I said, doing my research and understanding that in the past you partnered with Howard County Coalition to stop intimate partner violence. And this is a very, very prevalent topic, I guess, overall, all around the board. It can be very touching. And there's kids that actually know, like I said, there's a lot of kids that are growing up in great conditions and great backgrounds, but then there's some kids that are growing up in some other backgrounds that are kind of hard and kind of rough, and one of that can be intimate partner violence. Can you kind of discuss the problem and how can we pretty much eradicate that issue? And what can be done to eradicate it?
So the Howard County Coalition to Prevent Intimate Partner Violence, I actually found that organization, and it is a sister entity to Seeds of Security, which is an organization and auxiliary of Bishop Easterlin of the United Methodist Church over in Fulton in the Maple Lawn area. And she created that to provide emergency funding for children, women, and men, because we know that housing is an issue oftentimes when individuals are in those unsafe and unhealthy environments. Students, I had an opportunity to serve on the Family Violence Council under the state's ethics committee. And this was an appointment by O'Malley, and I also served under Governor Hogan. And so my advocacy was to have social emotional learning in school from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, just like we have reading and writing. And I think social emotional learning is extremely important. So students will get help when there has been a tragedy. And my advocacy is, all right, we already know that there has been a call to this house 20 times. Why can't you offer support now? I mean, why can't you do that? So oftentimes the right people are not at the table, and some of the people who are at the table, they're not willing to talk about the pink elephants and get the job done. So I am happy to say that they have moved. It takes a long time for system change, but after 4.5 years, they did develop a brochure. Now they're having dialogue. It's not implemented. But my prayer is that social emotional learning is taught in schools. So students will feel comfortable sharing and providing support to those families in those particular situations, and not where it's a hostile takeover, but there are resources and support that are provided for family members, because we know that hurt people. And oftentimes there are mental illness that are going on. There are other challenges that influence various behaviors, and all of them need to be addressed. But there's like a 3-tier system that they follow in the state of Maryland. But my thing is, children have access to a psychologist and a psychiatrist, meeting with them twice, even before a parent knows anything about it. Utilize the services that we already have. Stop, creating or leaving the barriers as they are. If there's a problem, rectify the problem, So hopefully we will one day be able to have that social emotional learning K through 12. So individuals will be able to tap into services immediately and learn about it and how to express themselves and have a welcome environment when they do express themselves about things that are typically not welcome in school and utilized as punitive damages. When a person is already a victim, don't victimize them again. But it happens oftentimes than not.
Dr. Akeda, we've talked about teachers and we've talked about local governments and funding. And when a school system is failing or when it's positive and doing well, um, either way, there's a lot of accountability that should go around. One thing that we have not talked about are parents and uh, how much more involved should parents be with their children and with the school system? Because I recognize that sometimes people have to work multiple jobs or long hours, and they heavily rely on the school system to help with their children and their children's development. But should they be more involved today? Because when I was in school 20 years ago, like when I got in trouble in ninth grade, I got in a lot of trouble. My grandmother came up to the school and sat with me in class for a while until I got my act together, and I would hear it from my mother or my aunt and uncle. I don't know if that happens these days, but should parents just be more involved in what they are?
I think we have to look at the level of engagement and what we classify as engagement. Because parental involvement could be where this parent making sure that their child got to school. That is their level of engagement. Whereas they may not be able to facilitate supporting them with homework because they just don't have it in them. They may not have the funding to provide tutoring. They just may not have the funding. They may be an addict. They love their child, but really they can't provide what the child needs, but they still love their child. So when you send your child to a school for learning, I am a big proponent that learning takes place in that space with the teacher. That's what we get paid to do. So what happens at home should support the learning that happens in the classroom. If you are on a job, they are expecting you to produce and for you to reach a certain goal. I believe that is true when you go to a school. So we can't control what parents do. We know that there are statistical data that says that parents who are involved, those children fare well. One of the key things you said that you had a mother and you had a grandmother. I mean, those students that have moms, 50% of their stuff is already laid out. But there are a great deal of students who are in our schools that do not have that traditional family structure or the support of a grandmother. The grandmother could be the first line and the mother's not there. So there are all kinds of dynamics that play a role. I would say those parents who could be more engaged and more involved, absolutely, to whatever engagement they can. But I do not think that we should make an excuse of students learning because the parent is not there. I believe that is a cop-out because that's what you get paid to do. You get paid to teach students to learn. And when they're there, you can only deal with what you have when you are there. So, and it's for me, it's about relationship. There was, you all are probably too young to know about James P. Comer, and there were Comer schools. And he's a psychologist, and he did this study with students who were from some of the most challenging urban schools. And they took these students and taught them, number one, from a point of relationship and building relationships and providing the tools and teaching them. So the parents weren't there. That wasn't their thing to focus on parents. They focused on the child. And they test the students. The students scored extremely high. Well, because of course he's African American and he has all of these students who are predominantly African American. These students have had all kinds of challenges, and these students were not viewed as students who could excel academically. So they made the students test again. They said the first test was flawed. Well, all the students, they took the test again and they scored even higher. Right? So it's very important to not make excuses, because I think that's an excuse. The parent is not there. That's an excuse to say that children are not learning because the parent is not there. Yes, I agree that parents should be involved, but that's not the key focus of students learning. When you have them in your purview to teach, you develop that relationship. The relationship is the key cornerstone to students learning. And if that is not developed, learning is not going to take place. James P. Comer said, no significant learning can take place without a significant relationship. So it's the relationship that the student is willing to tap into their intrinsic motivation to learn. Not because I say you need to learn this.
Yeah, I agree to that. And just because in the sense of I've been able to, when I was working in the school system at times, and a lot of times that what I noticed the kids that they came to school every day. They may have had situations and issues outside of the school, but that the school was something that was normal to them. And being able to go to school, being able to, get a meal in the morning, being able to see their friends, at first it was kind of hard for them to learn, but once they were able to actually sit down, and once they actually knew that they had teachers and people and a support system that was there for them through thick and thin, they were actually able to learn, And I mean, I've seen some rough. I've seen the roughest of the roughest, and they were actually in a position to where if you build the relationship first with them, and if they can trust you, and if they know that you care for them, they're able to actually feel comfortable in that environment, and they want to learn. It's not like they don't want to learn. It's not like they want to be in a position to where they don't know anything. I think they do want to learn, but they just have to be in that environment to where they feel that person, that support system is there. Like I said, through thick and thin, because they've seen a lot, they've endured a lot at a young age, and just making sure that you can provide that zone for them to where it's an environment where they're able to learn and do better and learn more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Dr. Akeda, we talked about students and parents, and some of the teachers. I want to touch on the teachers a little bit. You're involved a lot in developing our teachers here in this area and probably elsewhere as well. What are you telling these young teachers that are coming up through these programs? What are you you got to break it down to a real, this is what you got to expect. It's not going to be all flowers, and really in any school system, really, because I've also been an educator before many moons ago. And whether it was, in Baltimore County or PG County or Howard County, each deal with challenges. But what are you telling these young minds who are getting ready to go out into this world of Baltimore City and getting ready to teach our youth? What are you telling them?
Be encouraged. Don't quit. Be encouraged and don't quit. And it's not so much of what you say, but providing tools for them to be successful. Being available. So I'm a mentor to several teachers, principals, colleagues. And it's just being there for them, because there's so much involved in being a teacher. There are so many tasks that you have to master. And when you're looking at absorbing the curriculum, because you got to know the curriculum and the content in order to teach. You just don't show up and read a lesson plan. So when we look at some of the individuals that are in the classrooms, because of the teacher shortage, we have a lot of career changers. And I encourage them to come in. There are some individuals who may have wanted to teach years ago, but they had to take care of a family. So they needed a job where they could make money. And now they are on their second or third careers. And even though it is a huge task, children are awaiting for that beacon of light to come in, to inspire, to encourage, and to help them reach their full potential. And understanding the child development. And I always kind of go back when educators are having tough days. And I'm saying, go back to the child development stages and what should they be doing at this age group? And just reminding them they're children. So why would you expect them to think this way or act this way or say this in this particular manner? Their prefrontal cortex is not developed. So you're expecting something that's not there. So even though they may act the part some days, at the end of the day, they're still 13. At the end of the day, they're still 17. So just take a moment and reflect. And reflecting is very important. And educators should reflect every day. So just making sure that I'm there for them. And not necessarily just for education, because you spend your whole time as a teacher and grading papers and you have, 150, 200 students. I mean, you're grading papers at night, on the weekends when you're getting your hair done, in church, you got a church meeting afterwards, you got your bag and you checking papers while you listening, in the meetings. And, that's the life of a teacher. I mean, it's difficult. And the thing about it is the average teacher also has a second job because they don't get paid a lot of money, but you're still required to, check papers and make sure you are responding and being attentive to the students so they can know what areas they need to improve on.
I felt like when I was a teacher, I felt like it's, like you said, it's not a job. It's a lifestyle. It's like an entrepreneur. It's a lifestyle. Like you have to be a teacher 24/7.
Yeah.
Even when you're not, because your kids see you out at the mall or whatever, and it's like you gotta be Mr. Brandon or Mr. McCray. Well, you gotta be him all the time. That's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, and then they expect you to be at their games, to come. You're gonna see me tonight. We got a game tonight.
Yeah.
So it's you're it's 24/7.
It is 24/7, but I will say the one thing I do miss, and if any of my former students who are now grown adults were listening to this, I do miss that bonding with some of the kids. Some of them kids, I don't know. I had to send them back home to their mama, but the majority of them, no. I mean, seriously, it was like you touched on it before. Building those relationships and seeing them grow from. I primarily taught high school. Seeing high schoolers come up. And then even as an adult, bumping into them, I follow some of my former students on social media. I'm glad a lot of them are doing well. So it's a special thing for sure.
Yeah. And they laugh and they make fun of you. And when some of them see me, I mean, they remember some of the cliches I would say, and and being real firm. And I've had so many experiences. I could keep you here for days and days and days over the years with students. But I am also a trainer for Kids at Hope. And it's a cultural framework where all kids are capable of success, no exceptions. So even when there are students that may be difficult, as a hopeologist and a treasure hunter, if I can't find the treasure in that student, as a hopeologist, it is my duty to make sure I find somebody else who can reach this child. Because we may not gel with all students. We may not.
I like that, okay. Hopeologist.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I do a training, Kids at Hope in school districts and in agencies and stuff like that. But yeah, it's all kids are capable of success, no exceptions. And all kids are capable of success. There's no student that cannot achieve.
You got me ready to go back to teaching, Chad. Yeah. You got me.
I'm recruiting. I got some programs over at Boone to help
I'm
you out with
motivated now.
Yeah.
I get in that classroom in 5 minutes. I'd be like, what was I thinking? Dr. Akeda, you got to come get me.
Come pick me up.
Oh, man. No, that's great. I like that. Hopeologist. I like that. There's a treasure in every child.
There is.
I believe that, but it gives you a nice visual of what the vision, what your goal is for each child. I like that. I like that.
Yeah, and it also shares how to teach students to time travel. Yeah, to time travel. So we're looking at students not just from, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, it's just not what do you want to be when you grow up, but how you want to give to your community. You want to have a family. What does that family component looks like? What do you have to do to have that family, to be able to provide and take care of that family? And then there's hobbies and recreation. That's a part of your life. What you going to do, it's just not about, what you want to be. Okay, I want to be an attorney or a doctor, whatever. But aside from that, there are other things that you aspire to do.
Right.
Dr. Keita, you dropping some jewels on us, and we appreciate that.
It's like what.
That was like on like Ray Lewis motivation level.
Yeah.
Like,
Brian Dawkins. Can you feel that daggone thing inside of your chest?
Yes.
That type of thing. Yeah.
Yes. There's a treasure that lies within you.
Brandon,
I love it.
Brandon, we're gonna get you back in teaching too.
Oh, man.
You on the record
I'm teaching adults now, but I'll leave that alone.
Dr. Akeda, is one other thing I wanted to touch on, and you spoke a lot about the challenges of our students and the educators and just the school systems itself. Like, you have been in some powerful positions within our school systems, locally, for sure. Being an African American woman, and what a lot of people would agree that is a male dominated field. Like, what are some of the challenges that you had in your journey into where you are now and starting some of these programs that you have, trying to implement your inner thoughts, all of this stuff that you telling us and that got us excited. Like, I know, again, like I said, working in the school system, I know it's easy to be excited about something, and it's easy for somebody that doesn't meet that excitement to put a halt to that. So what are some of the challenges that you've experienced during your journey in this in education and teaching everybody?
Well, number one, I am fearless. All right. So my doctorate degree is in equity. And there's a book that I've been writing for several years, and I'm not finished, but there is no freedom without persecution. There's no freedom without persecution. And I guess I was born to be an educator, but I came from parents who were sharecroppers, and that's the second form of slavery in the United States. I came from a little rural area, and I went to school in Somerton. There's a case, Briggs versus Elliott, and my great-grandfather was one of the supporters of that particular lawsuit. They did not want to integrate. Their fight was for a school bus. And they went to court 3 times for a school bus, and they were denied every time. That case was the first case for Brown versus Board of Education. So I think it's because of my rich background that has allowed me, in my relationship with Christ, that has allowed me to be fearless. So equity is something that I do in trainings. I do equity audits for universities and for systems. And people talk about they want to do change, but the majority of people, they just really don't want to do the change because they fear, they're in a system and they're going to lose their job. They fear that people are not going to like them. They fear that, it's not the popular choice. So I faced that in my career several times consistently, and it's still there. But, my thing is I'm on assignment wherever I go. And as long as God have me on that assignment, I'm going to do what I do. And people can take it or they can leave it. And that's how I roll.
All right.
I like that. Can you coach us? Can you stay on and coach us all the time?
Can you mold me?
Yeah.
Coach, you need to give us that motivation week in and week out, Doc.
Yeah,
But are you willing to be persecuted? Because you're going to be persecuted. So if you research enough, you'll see me in there,
Okay.
fighting.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I don't know if my other co-hosts have any questions, but there was a few, maybe two, if you don't mind asking, or answering, if you don't mind. And one was early on, we talked about Baltimore. And I thought this was interesting because there's this notion that Baltimore City is one of the highest federally funded schools.
You bringing up, Mike?
Yeah, Mike, you're going in and out.
It's got that AOL. Give him a second.
Well, Dr. Akeda,
Yeah.
One of our good friends, Leon, talked about just the Baltimore City. He thought it was one of the highest federally funded school systems. Is there any truth to that? Because as far as I'm concerned, as far as I knew, a lot of funding for school systems come from property taxes. And so just where's is there a lot of federal money coming to the city?
They do have some. So when they look at, so people use different matrix to say whether a school is highly funded or not. So given funding for one school district and pitting it against another school with different factors, different dynamics, different demographics, different tax bases. So individuals who are against a school system, they're going to say, oh, they're the most highly funded. But then you have to look at all of the caveats as far as what that school system face and the populations and the students and families that they serve against other school districts that may be getting the same funding. So they're not looking at disaggregated data. So you could say, all right, so Baltimore City gets $12,000, another school in another state gets $10,000. So they're, the highest federally funded school system in the country. I'm not in agreement to that. Based on some of the statistical data from reputable sources, they are about number 5 in our state. And we know that there are other counties in our state that have a larger tax base. I mean, it's the cost of living is higher. The legislators, they put more funding towards school districts than some of the other, than Baltimore City. And then you got to look at the tax base. So I think people are looking at different matrix and just summing things all up into one.
Can you guys hear me? I'm sorry.
But even if you look at, let's say, for instance, we have unions and we have negotiated agreements, and you look at, say, well, okay, they're funded this particular way. We could just look at Baltimore County, the teacher salary in Baltimore County, Howard County, Montgomery County, Anne Arundel County, Prince George's County, and Baltimore City, and let's see where that fares.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was saying before, my internet went out, but we hear this on the news, right? We see the governor and the mayor kind of fighting over this statement, and so I thought it was interesting, and I appreciate you shedding some light on that, because.
Well, that's one of the reasons why the school system suffers, is because you have lawmakers who are not willing to come together to really say, look, this has been a systemic issue, and these are the things that we need to overhaul. And it can be done, but there are people who are at the table who are fighting. So while they're fighting, while they are disagreeing, while there's all this political theater that's going on, children are suffering.
100%. 100%. There's another question here about some of the other great work that you do. My buddies from the Lunch Break Hot Take, they wanted to see if you could talk about your marketing consulting.
Oh, okay. So I that started many years ago when I lived in South Carolina, and I had an advertising and marketing company, and my main source was doing colored obituaries because that was the hot thing, and laminating them and all this stuff some years ago. But one thing about marketing and consulting, oftentimes individuals, they don't think that they are their number one fan. You sell yourself. So when we look at marketing and consulting, some of the things that I do when share and in trainings and in advertisement, you are your brand. So what you put out there, you are selling yourself. So even before you get to the table, the information that's out there is selling it for you. So make sure that, whenever you're in conversations, whenever you are sending out information, even resumes, people are seeing you before you even get to the table. So I still do marketing and consulting, not as much as I used to, but you are your seller. You are the person that sells you. I've also been a licensed insurance agent for 28 years. And so typically in insurance, you do a lot of leads. And I often get the question, why don't you get leads? I said, because I sell myself. I don't need them. So you from the old school, you didn't have all these innovative things to market. So it was all about relationships. And that's truly what it's about. It's about relationships.
Dr. Akeda, you do a lot, and we love that you came on and you shared these things with us. There's a lovely young lady that was in the audience as well. She made one of the four of us an honest man. Name is Alex. She said, "Thank you for this, OTR, Dr. Pearson. Very informative and trauma informed. Thank you, Dr. Pearson, for your very valuable work." And we agree with that. We appreciate you so much for this. This is amazing. This is what I just go off on a tangent sometimes, but you don't know how much this means to us. So thank you for being patient with us. This was about a month in the making, but we thank you for this. And I'll let my other guys say anything, but that's just I had to get that off my chest. But
thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Oh no, thank you for coming on. It's been something we've talked about for a long time. We've been doing this show for almost 2 years now, and we had conversations about doing something on just Baltimore City public school system, stuff like that, for a long time. So this was a long time coming. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. So anytime you can support them, support them. Support all school districts.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Akeda, so much for everything that you've done, for blessing us. You are golden. You are a true Renaissance woman. And as well, just to let you know, we just wanted to give you your flowers and everything because it's definitely International Women's Month. And we just wanted to appreciate you for everything that you've done, that you bring to the table, that you've done for our communities, and the good fight that you're continuing to persevere and carry on. And thank you for providing us the motivation that's needed. And for all the supporters and the subscribers and viewers that have tuned in, I know they have been able to, as well as us, get something very, very, very informative and great. So we just salute you so much, and we appreciate you.
Much obliged. Absolutely. Keep the record going. Off the record.
Dr. Akeda, as my co-host said, thank you for coming on. For anyone that's watching this or that will listen to it later on, make sure you check out Dr. Akeda on Third Sunday Tea Talk Show. Clearly a wonderful woman with a lot of insight into education, and we greatly appreciate it. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Anything you want to say in closing, Dr. Akeda? Anything you want the people to hear?
Keep doing the good work on Off the Record.
We appreciate it.
We need our Black men out there.
Hey,
keep it moving. Keep it going.
We out here.
We about to hire you as a fifth member. We need this energy.
We about to hire you as Auntie Dr. Akeda Pearson.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, again, to everybody that tuned in, we appreciate you, Dr. Akeda. We appreciate you even more. Thank you so much. That was off the record, the on the record version, the first one featuring Dr. Akeda. We thank you guys. Check her out. Check us out. Follow us on all our social medias. You know we follow back. We will holler at you guys. We're out.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace.